Alright, welcome to another video. Here we're talking about prerequisites and defense in regards to jiu-jitsu submissions. In the last video we talked about the Americana, so having enough range in my shoulder, and particularly the rotator cuff, to externally rotate. So the more external rotation I had, the more leeway I would have before I would need to tap. So a lot of this in these videos, I'm going to be discussing these prerequisites in terms of range of motion, and the idea being the more range of motion I have, the more resiliency I have in these tissues, the more time I could probably give myself to get out of an attack. You can use these same concepts in a bunch of different sports, but for me, this is the one that I'm focusing on. Jiu-jitsu is kind of my sport. But if your sport has these types of range of motions, you can use these types of exercises and these ideas, these concepts, to continue to build resiliency in the tissue. But today, we're going to be discussing the Kimura. So for the Americana, we're looking at external rotation. For the Kimura, we're looking at internal rotation. The shoulder is still being attacked, it's still a shoulder lock, but just looking at a different range of motion. So typically, when I'm looking at the glenohumeral joint, the shoulder, the rotator cuff muscles, internal rotation is bringing my shoulder down. In regards to the submission, it can be done from various different positions. Usually the common one is from this kind of side control. You're side mounted, the person grabs your arm, they will pluck it from you and internally rotate to bring the wrist behind the shoulder, and therefore needing to tap. Another one that can be common is if I'm in side control and someone grabs me from here, they'll place the head over and kind of lift the shoulder, or bring the shoulder up and kind of lift from that position. In any case, the same idea applies. The more range of motion I have in my joint, in the shoulder, the more likeliness I'll have before I need to tap, or it will give me time to use the escapes. And as I said in the last video, I highly recommend Coach Henry Akins and his videos for escapes in very different positions and different escapes from different attacks. But here we're looking at the resiliency. So first things we're going to look at are, what range of motion do you have? Like I said, the more range I have, the more leeway I have to tap. So if I only have range of motion here, then that's a big difference between full range of motion, where I would need to tap between that position. But if you don't have some of the things that continue to gain, much like in the last video, we're going to look at our capsular cars and our cars, and on a stretch to get more range of motion in that tissue. So again, the first exercise I kind of like to do is our cars, our controlled articular rotation, or our capsular cars, specifically looking at the rotational aspect of that joint. So for the shoulder, I'm looking at my full range of motion, hand facing forward, I'm coming across, up as high as I can go, rotating the thumb down as I bring my shoulder behind my back, continuing to rotate and extending. So that would be a full range car. Notice I'm trying my best to keep all the motion in my shoulder, not shrugging up or turning my body or my spine to try to get more range. So everything's completely in the shoulder, and these cars should be done as often as possible. More importantly, if I have an issue or a tension there that I want to overcome. The other one would be just the capsular car, so I can pick different ranges. I'm looking at One way to do it is keeping my elbow at 90 degrees, and I'm just rotating from external rotation to internal rotation. And you can pick different areas, especially if you have different sticky spots. And more specifically for jiu-jitsu, picking those different various areas where I might have the submission be done to me. So, I'm full up into my side. Maybe I'm down here. Maybe like we were talking about from the side mount position, I might have my shoulder kind of be back. So this might be a good place to kind of work some range of motion, internal, external rotation, internal, external rotation. And you're just looking for different areas where we can get some range of motion in the tissue. Side note, when we're working in these especially sticky places, you might elicit a cramp, and sometimes that could be due to your hydration level, but other times in regards to these new areas of movement, that's going to be, you might possibly getting a cramp because the body's just not used to being in that position. So those are two kind of various varied movements to try to get more range of motion or keep the range of motion that we do have, and you can just do those throughout the day. The second kind of exercise that I like to do for internal rotation is our sleeper stretch. So I'm gonna be laying down on my side, and in this case I'm working on my right shoulder. My elbow's at 90 degrees, and I'm really trying to keep that elbow at 90 as I kind of shrimp out of the way just to give me some room. But I'm trying to bring my wrist to the floor until I feel a stretch in my shoulder. Two things to kind of be wary of. One is losing this 90-degree bend. It just takes a little bit more, takes a little bit of the stretch off of that shoulder in particular. The other one is letting my shoulder come off the floor or whatever I'm stretching on. So if I come down, I can kind of start bringing my shoulder up. Yeah, my wrist is going down, but I'm taking it. I'm kind of cheating. So really keeping that elbow 90 degrees, trying to go down as far as I can go, and just holding a stretch. And we're just building range of motion. So in a functional range perspective, we're looking at longer holds. So this kind of yin yoga-esque long holds of stretches. So we're looking at around 2 minutes, as I'm usually recommending to clients. Because that's what it takes to start getting actual length through those tissues. So those are two exercises, really simple, that you can kind of work on. The cars, those are just doing, you're just continuing to do those throughout the day. The stretches, I usually recommend people doing them 2 to 3 times a day, especially if this is an area that you have to have work with. You find you're really scared of getting tapped in these positions, then that may be something I'd be working on daily, getting some extra range of motion in the tissues. Second note here is with either the movement or the stretches, if I'm having pain, I don't want to move into that pain or move into that stretch. If you're having issues, there's other different things that we could do, and I would either look for providers to try to get some of this closing ankle joint pain. So basically, if I'm bringing my shoulder and I feel like a pinch in the front of my shoulder, or going up from the last video, and I feel like a pinch in the back, or just that stretchy kind of pain, that might be reminiscent of closing ankle joint pain. So the tissue, something's constricting the tissue, and there's different exercises to be done for that. You can look at other videos in my Patreon, or finding a provider. Like for me, for instance, getting some space open in those joints in order for you to start to do these exercises. But these are two at least the movement. If I'm going through pain-free ranges, I can continue to keep these areas open and slowly but surely build more range, and more range of motion equals more resiliency. equals more time to get out of attacks. So hopefully that's a little bit helpful. I'll be continue to add some other options, but the next video we're going to be discussing is scapular movement and how this pertains to these two, particularly these two attacks that we were talking about with the Americana and the Kimura. So maybe I have really good range of motion in my shoulder and the glenohumeral joint, but there's something lacking in the shoulder blade itself, the scapula. So we'll talk about that in the next video, but hopefully this was helpful. Feel free to subscribe to this restructured health videos. I'm going to be slowly implementing some more jiu-jitsu content as far as like rehab, prehab. So keep your eyes tuned.